Hi, welcome. I'm so excited to introduce you to two special guests today because normally when I interview people, is one-to-one, but today I got not one but two special guests. So today I have Kate Gyngell as well as Judi Bastinwagner. So I'm always very nervous about last name, so pardon me, but everything will be written in proper English format. But I'm really happy to interview two because a while back in August, before I went on my epic journey in France, I was invited to speak to the Soul Business Circle, which is run by these two lovely ladies. And I met a bunch of really great people who I would call conscious entrepreneur, so totally soul business circles. So, and I was really honored to speak about my work day, and I met Jodi. And then we started talking, and I know that both of you actually run a soul healing studio and circles of wisdom. So I'm really excited to talk to you more about that and also about your individual journey. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, double value.
And I have never done this before, but I think it's because all the time when I do this interview or podcast, it's about conversation. I call them conversations that matter because we talk about people's healing journey, empowering lessons. So hopefully that will help to inspire others or maybe give people some insight whether they need to heal something they have in their life, or maybe starting a business or doing something like facing a change. So, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I hope you will enjoy this session together.
Well, thank you.
So first of all, I really want to ask you a little bit more about the Soul Healing Studio and the Circles of Wisdom. So as far as I know that, so both of you run this studio, and it's basically like healing sessions that take place there. And Kate, you do Ashati Healing, and yes. Judi, you do energy work, also Reiki, and sometimes you use aromatherapy and sound. So tell me a little bit more about those healing modalities. Do you do that together or separately? And how do you know what to prescribe to the client when they come to your studio?
Okay. Kate,
shall I? We do it together. I mean, we can do it independently as well, but we decided that we enjoyed working together, and also that actually the modalities that we have are different, but they work very well in combination.
And so there's a complementary, really. So I'm at one end of the table and Kate's at the other. And then we do the dance round the table. Actually, it's quite amusing, working on various parts of the body of whoever's there.
So. And I think, and everybody comes for different reasons. Sometimes it is emotional, and obviously energy healing is very powerful for that. Sometimes it's physical, and we do seem to be getting great results actually for both. And every session is slightly different. And at the beginning we tend to have a bit of a chat with the person who's coming along. Sometimes they want to share what's going on, sometimes they don't, but we'll always discover something as we go through the session, and then we have a chat about it at the end. So they last about an hour and a half, I suppose, altogether. At the very, very least, it's time out. It's very nurturing, and we've had some lovely feedback from that in that respect.
Yes. Kate, through her work, she actually is able to, I suppose you're a bit of a seer, aren't you? Is that part of
it's working down through the chakras, but I do get
messages from their guides.
And their higher self as well. So I do quite a lot of writing and things that come up as well.
And they're quite incredible. I mean, every single session, Kate blows me away with what she's been told or has seen. So that's an amazing gift that Kate brings to the healing sessions.
It's a great privilege to work on, people, and to be able to hear some of these messages sometimes. And sorry.
No. So people, when they come, they lie in the sort of massage healing bed, and is it like sort of hands off healing type of thing because it's energy healing, or you don't touch them? Do you touch them?
It really depends on them. Hands on for me mostly, unless they'd really rather not. And Judi does the most beautiful anointing ritual at the beginning, which is very kind of ancient ritual, really.
And it's nurturing. So if the person is I don't know, open to it, I normally wash their feet, which, as we all know, is an incredibly nurturing, caring, humbling, I don't know, thing to do for anybody, which of course is why Jesus did it in, the scriptures. But that aside, by putting oils on the feet, specifically for them, it's an anointing. It's also the best place that they can actually absorb very, very quickly the therapeutic benefits from the oils. So it's a double whammy, Everything we do is a double whammy, so you get Kate, you get me, everything's double. So
it sounds like a beautiful ritual. So you get anointment at the beginning, and you may have a little bit of breathing and talk about, if they want to, what's going on. And then you have like really a lot of energy healing type of, if people are not familiar with individual type of modality, and then maybe a debrief, and you may have sound like music at the background. So but do you, like, you obviously ask people, do they want to know, like, do they want to receive messages, or do they want to have the conversation? So do you sometimes come across the people who actually don't want to know?
Well, I don't know that we come across people who don't want that, because I think what Kate allows to come into her energy focus is what's right for them at that time. So everything is always for the highest good of that person who comes to us. And we have no judgment. We have no, I don't know, preconceived ideas about the person coming to us. So actually that, I think, is our strength, because we envelop them in love for, that hour and a half. And so whatever comes through is for their highest good.
I do believe that. I don't think it would come through if it wasn't meant to be passed on. If that makes sense.
That point.
And sometimes actually very, very little messages come, and it's simply about that it actually is a healing session. And it's more about just light and opening up the chakras and allowing. And I think, I think that healing can go on for the next 24, 48 hours or so. And so we've had people ring us, 24 hours or a day or two later, and say that things have changed, or, so it's lovely for us to feel that. And as Judi says, during that hour and a half or so, that room to me the studio is full of love. And I think, and Judi's an amazing aromatherapist. She does the most beautiful sound healing also. They all walk away with a personalized oil, and a crystal that's right for them. And
because I also douse at the end. So I'm a big douser. So
come back to that in a minute.
sure, no, that's fine. So I douse to see whether they need a crystal, or whether they need something else, or at that point. And so normally we're in a position so that they can either take it or organise it for them or something. So that we again care for them, not just in that hour and a half, but we are then helping them go forward back into their life with something to assist them.
You know what just came to my mind, it's quite interesting, is that I'm assuming, I'm not sure, you correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of people come for healing session, maybe they have something that they want to move forward to, move on, or heal the wound, emotional, physical, whatever that is. But what you describe, obviously there's a lot of healing benefits, but it's like such a treat, like a nurturing thing. Even people have no issues will be able to enjoy, right? Because it's like, and then I think when we go for massage or facial or anything like that sort, we don't really come for because we have an issue, right? We go there because we want to enjoy or pamper and nurture ourselves. I mean, I just wish that is a bit more common for us to think that way, that we should have like an energy tuning, or take time off and do this once a month or something, rather than when something really get us upset, like, let's deal with it. It's like, health is not the absence of illness, but health is cultivated purely because you want to be feeling good. And I think that's such a thing, like, you know, I talk to people a lot that, you know, if you want a certain result, you may get a PT to help you in the gym. So it kind of should be similar with a coach. If you've got something you want to do, you should get a coach. But no, but that's a different thing. It's like if you have a problem, you can't move on, you go to see a coach. And I just wish, do you find like most people come to you probably got something to deal with rather than, I just want to hang out today, ladies?
I don't know. We've had a couple of I just want to hang out, ladies.
Yeah.
But
Because
generally,
they know probably how pampering, nurturing it is.
Yeah, and I hope that will happen more often.
Yes.
Actually, as we grow.
Because you're right. You know, again, if you are feeling good, and so therefore your vibration is optimum, you are then going through life and reacting and acting with your highest ability, you know, on a vibrational level. So therefore your life would be, I don't know, I mean, to say better, it doesn't encompass it, but, you know, obviously you are then, help me out, Kate.
Well, I think it's less unlikely that you will make decisions where it's not aligned to your higher self, because you're like, you know, you're feeling good, you're being yourself, which in your normal state, you should feel this way. You know, I don't think it's normal for you to feel horrible.
But people do. I mean, some people who are depressed or thinking negative thoughts or however they are, you know, they in turn attract that negativity, and, you know, that the vibrational element within their life is not good. So therefore they are attracting bad energies.
That's true. And I also think, and I'm a huge fan of Eckhart Tolle, but I also think that doing something like this, it does kind of make people a bit more present. It's a bit more aligning, because I think there's so much time spent on striving, and as I said in my own kind of podcast, you know, if you're constantly reliving things in the past, even actually if they were happy things, one tends to slip into nostalgia or even depression. And if you're thinking about or worrying about the future, because generally speaking, again, when you're worrying about, well, when you're thinking about the future, you're either striving to get somewhere or worrying about things that may or may not happen, or you're thinking to yourself, I will actually be happy when this has happened, when I've achieved this, when actually, in fact, if it's not in the now, right now, as Eckhart Tolle says, actually you're very unlikely to actually be happy once you reach there, because you're not in a state of knowing who you are right now and where you are right now, and just being in that present moment and being aligned. And I think so much of it comes back to reconnecting to ourselves. And really, what I find is, or what we both find, is when we're during a healing session, that so often when I start working around the head, there's so much activity up here, and a lot of our actions come from here, and our words come from here, when actually we should be spending more time here, and our words and actions coming from here, which will soften that for both for others who come across us, but also for ourselves as well. And it makes us kinder to ourselves if there's more from here. I mean, we have somewhere between 50 and 70,000 thoughts a day, and the sad thing is that most of them we had yesterday, the day before that, and the day before that. And the even sadder thing is that 80% of them tend to be negative, and often about ourselves. And so by starting to, I know there's an awful lot of stuff we constantly hear, we need to love ourselves, we need to feel that we're enough, but actually really looking inwards more for our, you know, we have to be happy here first, I believe, rather than looking to get other people to make us happy. People can't make things or other things to make us happy.
You know,
yeah,
new houses.
I completely agree. I certainly think that if you banking everything in terms of getting that job, that house, that lover to make you feel happy, the chances are once you get there, it's like, I don't actually like it, or I don't feel happy. So you got to be happy now. Strong believer in that. And I also learned from a very wise teacher who told me that, you know, when you say you spend some time in the morning or during the day, that to pray or to read something positive or to meditate, to do something like that, or have a conversation with God, whatever that is, that works for you. The thing is that there's no guarantee you won't make mistake. There's no guarantee that you won't feel bad, but the chances that you're like much, much, much more likely to be yourself and not making those mistakes because you make that effort to align yourself or raising your vibration, whatever keywords people feel comfortable with. But I just think that once you just more be clear and grounded and, you know, be present, because you spend that 5 minutes doing that, yeah, that's definitely you have much higher chances to succeed the day.
And react in a different way. We're less reactive in that stage as well. Exactly. I think so.
Yes. And I think, as you said before, in that when people are taking time out and they understand that by coming to us, for instance, they are actually taking time to love themselves. That in itself is then also coming from a heart space back to themselves. So it's an important thing. So if you get to that point where you do realize that you don't come to us just for an issue, you come to us because it's maintenance.
A reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And so next thing I really want to ask about you both is that, the name says Soul Healing Studio and Circles of Wisdom. So tell me a bit more about the Circles of Wisdom. It sounds really great, but what is it about?
Well, it's going to, I don't know, develop into in information sessions or educational meetings. So again, in a circle for people undergoing change in their life, whether it be dealing with grief or depression, or young girls struggling with eating disorders, or I don't know, various problems that people are going through. And so we will assist and give them information and help them perhaps transition in a more aware way. I don't know. That's
and I also think there are so many people all over the world at the moment who are just becoming, slightly more conscious. It's a place for people to go and learn, and actually to be able to get their own, or to have their own wisdom heard. I mean, we all have that innate wisdom in us, and I do think there's a lifting of consciousness worldwide at the moment, whilst there are also some awful things going on. There is a kind of, I think there's real hope in that. And I think by providing these circles, it creates a space for people to come, and actually just by being in those circles, lifting the energy, and just giving each other support, really, too.
Yes, and it was purely because we were running the Soul Business Circle in a Crow's Nest, and I think we realised the power of the circle, not just for females but for men as well, and the fact that everybody then is on an equal footing, and we have something to add for everybody. So everybody who comes and sits in the circle then adds to the knowledge within that circle. I mean, circles go back, thousands of years, and have always been a very powerful thing. I mean, circles of stones, for one thing. I mean, we put those together for a reason. Mankind knows the power of the circles. It's just, I think, in our age of living in our houses, we seem to have forgotten a lot of that.
Living in our heads too.
Yes, living in our heads.
I love it, because I agree on so many different levels. I think, when people become more conscious about their health and well-being, or maybe, simply about the spiritual growth or emotional maturity, then you need a space to talk about it, discuss, or share what you're thinking, and you listen to other people's wisdom and knowledge. And I think in this digital age, we are so used to sending someone a text or sending a smiley face. That's a good, it's great to hear from someone you haven't seen for 10 years. Yes. But there's also a need to have more face-to-face interaction, rather than so quick, so transactional. So how many likes you get, Sometimes we need to go deeper rather than just more and wider. And I definitely appreciate you two running these type of circles and giving people that space to do that. And then coming back to the circle thing, I found it fascinating. You're right about stone circles. And do people, you think, sit in those circles to talk, like with this stone circle thing? I mean, to one hand, I thought, I believe people practice the ritual or a festival or observing the sun, the moon, whatever. But do people do things in a circle, back in the old days?
Yes.
Druid
Yeah, they're all
yes.
That's me.
Yes.
Yes, no, I do. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think the stone circles certainly were not just amazing orientations for sun, moon, stars, and everything like that, but generally within the circle of the stones, they would always have an altar, and the altar is purely two stones with another stone on top, where they would put a particular crystal or something like that, which then alters their state of consciousness. So it was a meeting place where people then were able to raise their vibration, and have discussions. I mean, certainly, the a lot of the villages were built around these circles, as in Newgrange in Ireland and places like that. The villages were almost interlocked with the circle. So yes, it was an integral part to where they were living and what they believed in. And of course, then when Christianity came and chopped everything down and put their places over the old circles, they then used the altar as part of their religion. But of course, it had been going on for thousands of millennia beforehand. Just ancient. But so these things were used then, and there's no reason why we can't use those, as you say, in this digital age, because those things are still very much a remembrance within our knowledge base. We've all had thousands of lifetimes where, yes, we've stood in those circles, yes, we were there, so we actually remember that, and that then would come through into the circles of wisdom.
Yeah, and I love what you said. I always been fascinated by that part of mortality, but I also want to add that even in modern science, they can find from our blood, from our cells, the cells have memory. The DNA has memory. So from our lineage, there is actually information in our DNA to contain things that we may have known before but were just forgotten. Going back to that, which lead me into a slightly different segment. But I know, Judi, you are Druid in training. So like my first question is, I often go, so just in case people are too shy to ask, so what's the difference between a Druid and a wizard? We're definitely because of all the movies, but we don't have enough Druids. And years ago, I went to what's that place called in America? Not Omega. Oh, it's not Omega Institute, where you have like retreats and at that time I was learning about hypnosis. I met Dr. Brian Weiss there. But one of the students was a Druid, and she gave me a book about Druid, but I haven't really read it. Because 10 years later I'm going to meet, because I know 10 years later I'm going to meet Judi, and so she's going to explain to me. So
absolutely, now you've got to read it. Well, okay, the difference between a Druid and a wizard, I suppose if you carried the Druid thing to its ultimate point, because of the spirituality that's involved with finishing your Druidic training, which can take, I think I'm going to be 30 years in the making. So it can, everybody's different, and by the time you get to the end, you would probably be pretty much a wizard. I think there's some, pretty magical people out there. Whether you would call them wizards or not, I don't know. It doesn't mean, of course, that you would have a wand and change people into frogs. Though, of course, that is tempting on occasion. Kate.
It's just about you and being a Druid.
But I think with the Druid thing, for me, there's been a lot of learning about the stone circles, archaeoastrology, I don't know, the rituals, why they're based, around the wheel of the year. Again, it was something I grew up with when I was growing up as a girl in England, because in the country, in Suffolk, which some would argue is possibly 200 years behind everybody else in the world, but we still had a lot of those things actually happening, and so my mother would say, okay, it's Halloween tonight or whatever, let's go and get a mangle wurzel and make the lantern out of it, and bring the holly and things like that for Christmas. And of course, these are very much things that have been left over from the Druid festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Before Christianity tried to stamp it out by saying, oh no, Christmas is when Jesus was born. Well, actually he wasn't, but anyway. That Christmas, I shouldn't call it Christmas, but the festival at that time of the year is actually when everything dies, and it's a time of rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, when
you're talking about shamming, or
yeah, that's it. And the Christian guys came along. They said that'll be a good time for Jesus to be born. So that's why they put it at Christmas. You see, that's it. So it's interesting again. So how those festivals, the 8 festivals of the year, were then drawn into Christianity, like Easter, and that's another one that's been pulled forward, and things like that. So so I suppose my interest started by learning about the Wheel of the Year, and then from that I have started to try to become a Druid, which, as I say, is an interesting course. I've done the first year of being a bard. I now have the chance to go on to do the next course, which is being an ovate, where you learn about, so the bard is all about telling your story, and I don't know, the basic festivals and things like that. Being an ovate, you start to learn about the trees and, I don't know, herbs and that kind of stuff, so more witchy. And then, of course, the actual Druid at the end, the ovate, you become, I don't know, yes, far more alchemist and magical based, I suppose. So that really would be the icing on the cake. Don't feel I'm ready for that one yet, so I've still got to learn about
I'm fascinated by all that, because a few years ago I went to Glastonbury, probably the most touristic place for all these things. But what I wanted to say is I met a few people who are more like sort of the Druid, or living in sort of accordance with the nature. But what I find, apart from the interesting outfit and all that, I actually love all this stuff.
Gotta have the cloak. Yeah.
Because like in Glastonbury, people are very happy to dress up in fairy tale looking, and they walk around town, because one thing is very touristy, so people look for that. Second, they feel comfortable, they feel accepted, which I love, because people can wear whatever they like. But it's I love the fact that they're very much in accordance with nature, and they observe the nature, they live with the nature. They're very much into that, and I think that makes you more present, because we are so focused on digitalize everything, that we sometimes forget to look at the sky, we forget to connect to the earth. So I really adore that kind of living, and I had a great time there. So I'm totally with you, and I wish you all the best luck to become a Druid and wizard and all this magical thing.
Well, it's a very much a spiritual course, as I say. So it's not just hanging around outside under the moon, but nevertheless there is an element of that, which again brings you, as you say, into presence and an awareness of your surroundings, which then, of course, just, I don't know, it's such a special thing to realize, because we, like the sun comes up, the moon goes down, all this kind of stuff, but we actually don't understand it. And since it's so fundamental to our life, it's important. It really is important to be able to step outside, as you say, our digital world, and embrace that side as well.
Nature's
lovely.
Yeah, and it's absolutely. Trees are incredible healers.
Yes.
So much. Yeah.
And I love all that. And just before we switch gear again, I'm going to ask Kate about your podcast, because it's very remarkable. I just wanted to add last thing, that to conclude that part is, so many people have this conception about people being spiritual or learning all these nature things are probably unproductive daydreamers. But you know what I find is that a lot of people who are actually interested and really like honing in that skill, they are much clearer in their mind. They're more aligned with their heart. So they may be basking under the moon for 2 hours, but then they write a goddamn good email the next day, or write a great, brilliant book. So there's nothing like, there's nothing like mutually exclusive about being spiritual and then productive and successful. On the other hand, I think people know what they're doing, they put their heart and soul into it, they actually achieve much better results to have high quality products. So I mean, I'm told, I actually, when I have to write a really difficult email or anything that I really need to use my sort of the business acumen or anything, that type of analytical skill, I actually want to meditate before. I want to go out for a walk. I mean, I think people really need to change their perception about being spiritual. Then you can't be productive or prosperous and all that kind of stuff. It's actually the opposite. I think,
Yes, absolutely.
I think people look at the word spiritual or hear the word spiritual, and I agree, and they think it means something, just a bit esoteric and out there. I think meditation, walking out in nature, it's, it can be just clearing the mind.
Yes,
it's
just
so
clarity.
simple as that, really,
Yes.
and being present.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I already mentioned it. I want to ask Kate about your podcast, which is called the Remarkableness. So,
Yes.
and I have looked at some of your guests, and definitely they come from all different backgrounds or walks of life. So, first of all, what got you this idea to create a podcast is really talking about human story that is about courage, resilience, and resourcefulness. And like, what got you to do that? And second of all, how do you find all these incredible people?
I think what got me started was that I was a mum of three. Hadn't really had a particularly inspiring career. I mean, I'd worked in London for some time. I worked over here, and I think I kind of lost myself a little bit whilst I was at home with the children. And then I started my business in nutrition with Usana, and I got a lot of sort of personal development went on. I know that, again, this is a phrase that's banded around all over the place, but at the same time, for me, it was really, really important. I had very low confidence, really. And so I looked to a lot of people who encouraged, supported, inspired me. And over the years of working in that business, which, I kept on meeting all these amazing people, and I thought, well, you know what, I've had so many people help me and give me the courage to actually do something new. I thought there are bound to be so many other people around the world who perhaps know they can do something. They don't really know exactly necessarily what it is, or they might do, but they just don't have the courage to actually step up or take that next step. And I thought, well, if I can talk to people and interview people who are happy to talk about their own journeys, who've either come through extraordinary challenges themselves, whether they be their health, or I interviewed somebody who did 3 tours in Afghanistan, and talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, that kind of thing, or whether it's people who actually have created something amazing themselves, that to get those stories out were really important. And as I said in a little video at the beginning, I do believe we do all have a story.
Mm-hmm.
We are all remarkable. Sometimes we just haven't realized that yet ourselves. And so really there was no other motive than to perhaps help people see that, and to get these people I have interviewed their stories out. And as to how I just sort of come across them, when I made the decision to do the podcast, I already had a few people in my mind. But then more have sort of come, and I think that's what happens with the universe. Really, you open that door, and however, I don't do it nearly as regularly as you do. At the beginning, I had this idea that I would do one a week, and then I realised actually, with everything else that was going on, that was going to be quite hard to do. So I've got a few other people lined up now, and I shall get back in. But the wonderful thing about podcasts, of course, is that they are evergreen. So I do, it has grown. I do have people listening all around the world, which has amazed me. And when I look at my kind of analytics, I can still see people regularly listening, which is wonderful. And I, if it's making a difference, or even just entertaining people, then I'm thrilled, really.
And like 2 things here. One is, I definitely want to ask you, after all this interview, or some of them may not get into interviews yet, but you have met different people along the way. And what is the most remarkable thing you have learned or found, perhaps about human nature, or lessons that you learned from these human stories?
I think the people I have interviewed, on the whole, they will find good in anything. I mean, and in everything, however challenged they've been, and they're just the resourcefulness of humans, I think, as a whole. And people have been, there was one particular interview I'm thinking of, which really, she was absolutely rock bottom. She'd lost a child, cystic fibrosis. She had another child who was going through, a double lung and heart transplant. But before that, total rock bottom. And as she said, there is really only one way but up. And it is, I think, what we're capable of, and also how other people will come to our rescue as well. I think if we reach out to others. Humans, they're very hard. I do believe, awful things go on in the world, but I do believe at our heart we are compassionate, and we do want to make a difference in some way.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think that, this is part of the human nature, that we have ability to be resilient, we are compassionate and empathic. But the thing is that we kind of know, but we also don't remember most of the time. So that's why when I find podcast or writing articles or sharing stories so important, because then you remind people, and people are like, yeah, resilience, got it, But when you tell people a story that goes through extreme difficulty and rise back up, or saying that, there's nowhere else to go but up, those stories really impact people, very much because that we're empathic, we can associate, we can relate to those feelings. So I think what you guys are doing, it's fantastic. And obviously the circles of wisdom will resonate with that. It's talking about, conversation that matter, things that really touches our emotions. So I think it's fantastic, and thank you so much of doing what you do, and pampering, nurturing people, sharing stories, and do all these incredible things, and becoming a wizard and all that. And I think it's fascinating.
I'll get my hat.
Yeah, like that. We spoke a little bit before. It was so funny. I mean, I have to say, when I asked, Judi, what's the difference between a wizard and Druid? And she go, the hats, and it was hilarious. I actually fascinated by all that you do, and I hope you keep going, and let me know if there's any new thing that come into play. And yeah, thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much.
Thank
indeed.
you, and thank you for taking time out to interview us. Thank you.
Hear our stories. Thank you.